Now that's a parking spot.
Introducing the I may have underestimated the size of my car policy with accident forgiveness from American Family Insurance. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly. Get a quote. Find an agent. Visit amfam.com.
Optional policy features not included in base policies. Review policy for coverages and exclusions. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Welcome to Audio Gyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Anusha Yadav with us on Audio Gyan. Anusha is a portrait photographer, brand culture design consultant, and curator of narrative, visual, and theme-based archives and ideas. She founded India Memory Project in 2010, the world's first online visual and narrative-based archive that traces a personal history of Indian subcontinent through images found in family and personal archives. Today we are here to discuss more about her insights into building this culturally rich project and what went into this project. So thank you, Anusha, for giving us your time, and it's a real pleasure to have you on audio.
My pleasure as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've come up with few questions, and let's see where do we land up. So first, can you set the context by saying what is India Memory Project and what was the thought behind starting it?
Actually, it's Indian Memory Project.
Yeah, sorry, Indian
with
Memory.
an N.
Yeah.
I started it for many reasons. I think one is the idea fell into place, and it didn't require many resources, and I could do it by myself, so I just did it, because an idea like that actually, like many ideas, need to be done to be seen whether it will work instead of being thought through. I had wanted to, a lot of things had started this off. I was always interested in old photographs and archival images. I was also disappointed that I could never find much of it online. And of course, that was the time when the internet had just begun. But people on Facebook had started sharing photographs. There was a synchronicity in how Facebook had started for photo platforms and how the Indian Memory Project also came about. But it started giving me... I design books, and so I decided to go to a publisher saying that let's do a book on history and contemporary cultural ideas of Indian weddings. Mainly because I knew that everybody had a picture of a wedding. Everybody in this if the world, if not the country. And so therefore we could actually trace, and everything was becoming at that time, I think there was a lot of Karan Johar Bollywood wedding, and those ideas that were being translated across the world, that this is how Indian weddings are, which was something that irritated me also. That there's a lot more, that if I go to Assam, the wedding is different. If I go to Kashmir, the wedding is different. If I go to Tamil Nadu, the wedding is different. And there's different cultures, there are different ceremonies, different people are involved, the jewelry is different, the clothes. Everything is different.
The rituals, in fact.
Rituals and ceremonies are different, but everything comes with a certain context. And I was wondering if there was a way to document these ideas and present it to the world within a beautiful coffee table book. So I actually that is when I asked people on Facebook to send me wedding pictures. And it's very interesting because it helps sometimes when people don't take instructions well, is that I ask them for wedding pictures, but they send me all kinds of pictures with different kinds of stories. But I did select a few. I did make a proposal. The proposal fell through. I went right back to earning my own rent. But those pictures were still there in that group, and people would keep commenting, and I would keep looking at it. And for 1 year, I think around the same, in Feb sometime 8 years ago, or 9 years ago, the idea just fell into place that there is a much bigger idea here. People would mention partition, they would mention polyamory, they would mention professions, travel, all kinds of things. And they start telling you stories about them. And that's just when I realized this was a much bigger idea than just weddings. That this was, if I could keyword every context that they mentioned, it's a library. I can create a whole library, and all I need to do is keyword and categorize them. unfortunately, voila, there was WordPress for me to do that. Because it was the blogging tool that they were using that helped me actually create a library. And so that is what I started using, the tools to create this library. And I started online on a free blog, as a free blog platform. But it was very clear it was not a platform. It was not a blog. I gave it a value system. I decided what it will do, what it won't do, how will it do it, at what, what kind of images will come, setting up the criteria, how I need to keep my personal preferences aside so that it doesn't interfere with the vision that I want this archive to have. And that's what set off. I've learned a lot about the world through that archive.
Correct. You also mentioned that the images which are sent has to be before 1991.
Yeah.
So what made you pick this criteria?
Well, it started in 2010. So for me, 10 years ago was not feeling very old. Also, the quality of images was all digital. It was all feeling very contemporary.
Okay.
And so I felt that there was still 2 centuries. I mean, I had, studying history of photography from all over the world and from India, or the subcontinent, that there is so much that was not documented. That why? So in my interest, I would rather go further back rather than be contemporary. Not to say that this is not archivable. Eventually, it will be.
Correct.
It will become a study of society. But for me to draw a line on the kind of pictures I was looking for, I needed to say 1990, and I just said 1991 basically because the number was cooler instead of ending with a 0.
Interesting. And you said you had a value system and you had certain parameters for people to send or upload or send you pictures of that. Was this criteria mainly to help you fasten the process of curation, or you wanted to completely get rid of curation if they match this criteria?
Both. It was so that I could keep my personal preferences aside. Number 1. Number 2, I was studying how archives around the world were working, which was the National Archives of London, of UK, whether it was the Library of Congress in USA, and different projects that they were running, and what was the systematic approach. And very quickly, and it was very interesting. At the same time, I heard a talk by P.K. Nair, who was the archivist at the Film Institute in Pune, who said that the archivist needs to be neutral. You can't, as long as you put a criteria in place, because you don't know what is important right now, because we don't know enough. How can we know what is important if you don't know enough? Which was exactly to the T. And number 2, it was that I needed to look at the world, also be surprised. I needed to want to hear as many stories possible, as many kinds of stories that may happen because of it. So I gave it a value system. Also legally, I needed to be very clear that, legally that this works. It is not crossing any lines. There needs to be transparency with anybody who's contributing or even running the archives. It was all these other different things that I needed to place in some value system that fell into place. That worked for me and for the society it was meant to serve.
I remember like doing one interview with Amrit Gangar, who's a film historian, and in one of his talk he says that there's a lot of things which have to be archived in the film space also, because the film itself is celluloid, so it has a lifespan of say 100, 150 years, and almost there could be around 60 to 70% of motion pictures which are not even documented. We don't know about it. So it's a very important and nice thing. Anusha, I wanted to ask you, there are like millions of untold stories and unsung heroes in almost every part of the world. So what is like your process of capturing them through your project? I mean, you said you want to just tell or say document, share stories, right? But is there any criteria? Is it only partition? Is it only the way you said only.
No, what I look for in an image is that it has an essence of the collective. Because essentially the idea of Memory Project is that micro stories form the macro story. Right?
Collective, you mean?
The collective, I mean that it is people can a lot many more people can connect to that story or find connections to that story, or the Indian subcontinent as a collective. By that mean that whether it's collective memory, what kind of people we are, what kind of societies we've been, how have we changed? Because study of history, as I heard someone say, was also a study of change. And how do we, and it was getting that one image that I would, so it didn't actually matter, as long as it fit the criteria, it would go up, even if it didn't interest me, even if I had no interest in the subject that the person was talking about. But yes, I've learned how to be an investigative journalist, for a lack of a better term, is that I try to read between the lines. I try to ask questions. I try to read the emotions behind a story, behind that story that is being told. How people have felt, what kind of circumstances happened around that. If somebody is talking about the 1940s, is it that they experienced partition? Did they not? And the experiences are very different from somebody from the south of India and from the north of India. And so or from the east or from the west. And so there are people I heard a story of a lady in Punjab who came from a rather wealthy family, so was very protected as well. She never even knew partition was happening while she is a young teenager, sitting in Jalandhar, because she was completely protected. So it's all kinds of stories that surprise you, that she had no idea it had happened. There are people, there's a story on Indian Memory Project who had no idea who Gandhi was until Gandhi was assassinated.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So it's incredible that there are all these kinds of stories and that we can actually take nothing for granted. But it's very important for as an archivist, or the place that I've chosen to be in, is to completely remain neutral. You cannot judge people for what they know, what they don't know, what they experience, what they didn't experience, because there are all kinds. And it takes 1.6 billion people of us to make it. I mean, there's so many stories that go unacknowledged. I'm reading a fascinating book called Family Secrets in the Victorian times, where in Calcutta, 1 of every 6 children was half white. And if they were white looking, they would be sent off to England. And if they were brown, they stayed in India. And it's fascinating. Can you imagine the kind of population that is? So no wonder when friends of mine who are Bengali who say that they feel themselves to be more cultured and superior. This is what they're, who knows what kind of histories people are talking. And there are lots of kinds of histories that are not being mentioned, whether it is about domestic abuse, whether it is about gender problems, whether there are about queer groups. These are the kind of stories that have not yet arrived. But I'm digging around for somebody to give us those kind of stories, because that is, this world, I promise you, this project has taught me to take nothing for granted. Anything is possible. It's just it's fascinating.
Fascinating.
It's incredible.
So it's really fascinating. In fact, just a second. In fact, I had like a similar question on top of that. How is like one's memory relevant to other?
Yeah.
So you briefly touched upon it, but what kind of patterns or any anecdotes you have seen that you have been unbiased and put that story out, or put that image out, and then it has connected or resonated with multiple places, thereby forming a collective. So any thoughts on that? Because
it's also it's full of surprises. So there's a picture that came to me.
Sorry to interrupt, but just taking an example, I've seen someone's marriage photo, right? And it says my mother was getting married and stuff like that. So now, how does that story connect with other stories in the same thread? And what is that thread also?
There are many. That's the thing. There are many kinds of threads, and there are threads that you would not even expect is a thread.
So can you?
So it's, for example, there is so there's a lady who told me the story of her marriage, and actually not of her marriage. The picture was about their marriage, about how they fell in love, but she mentioned a small detail in passing, saying that when she was growing up, they lost out. She was for 2 years, schools were shut, and so therefore she had to be homeschooled. And that is when I was like, what do you mean for 2 years schools were shut? She said, yeah, during partition 2 years colleges and schools were shut. And that is when it occurred to me that there's we have a generation of our parents who have lost out on 2 years of school, but it doesn't come up. It doesn't come up at all. That these institutions. So this is how suddenly something in passing, she said, becomes a matter, connects to a collective idea. Or that they were part of, for example, somebody said that their parents were getting married and there was no electricity in the house because there was an India-Pakistan war going on in the 1970s and Calcutta was on high alert. And she says, my mother stepped into the house and the electricity came, So it was like this magic that happened. And at that moment, and everybody thought of it as a great omen of good that will happen. I mean, these are things said in passing.
Correct.
But that particular war, can you imagine how many people it has affected? Or how many people's lives, what was going on at that time? And that is where the collective starts coming in. And it comes in different ways. There was another story where a person mentioned, there is no picture of this because there was no photography at that time. In the 17th century, his great-great-great-grandfather came to India with the East India Company. He's a white man. Decided to stay here. 6 generations they stayed in this country. And he says that, my grandfather's name is this. And suddenly there's another family who says that, by the way, we belong to the same family. Wow. And this is another family living in Australia. And they had no idea 6 generations later these people are connecting. And how many kinds of nationalities and races and people and businesses, the people who've stayed. India is literally, they call it the melting pot. It is the real melting pot. The whole world has passed through it. Whether it's from the east, whether it's from the north, west, south, it's crazy. And I mean, this is endless. I can go on and on and on.
Yeah. I can. In fact, I am really struggling to visualize that. How are you able to even put up these stories because it's so humongous in the nature.
It is, but it is also a way to manage it, right? I mean, you can only manage that kind of collective's past, which is going to surprise you at every step through a story. That's the only way to do it. It's the other verses. So the idea is to put all of them together and tie them through the help of technology, which is using keywords and categories. If I put in a search, anything related to partition should come up. Anything related to, the cut of your hairstyle should come up. I mean, these are things that will indicate, but it also depends on what we're looking for. But that's the only way to manage or organize something like this.
Yeah, I was thinking of one project, but if you just take one photograph and dissect it into 1,000
I can give
keywords.
You 75 stories related to one photograph.
So what, according to you, is the best format of capturing memories and why?
There are many formats, but it also depends on what kind of memory. I mean, memory is a very vague term. Memory is just what you want to or have decided to or choose to remember or forget. One of the two. One of the many things. But there are many formats. I mean, people take photographs to capture memories. People write to capture memory. People tell stories, do podcasts. There are many ways to do it. There is no best or worst. It depends on what works for that person.
So if I may rephrase, what's the most powerful way to live the memory again?
Time travel. Superpower of time travel. That would be great. But that is not yet been told. If they have it, it's not in public domain as yet.
Nobody can easily access it. So photographs?
Well, that
As
is,
in photograph versus
see, the thing
text.
is that yes, the photographs eventually, and because I also am a photographer, it is not the exact memory. It is a memory of a memory, and so it's the closest to the truth. It is never the truth. It will never be. So it is that. Yeah, it will come closest to it, but it's. People can also find that through text. People can also find it through. I mean, the strongest way to evoke memory is smell, is a fragrance, and
Which also I
which
think
is
lacks.
the most powerful. Which is interesting because that's the only thing they haven't been able to translate yet properly. I think there are little inventions and things going on is to translate it for us in an everyday life. Is how does technology capture.
It lacks on the
Smell.
digital medium at
Oh,
least
yeah, yeah.
there, but maybe museums in some places they are
Yeah, so, but I mean, that is the strongest format of memory is smell.
Wow.
And fragrance and, or
So I
bad
think
smells and good
five
smells.
senses we can like go
Oh, yeah.
abstract at that level and just
Yeah. No, I
summarize.
wouldn't go abstract, but the sense of smell just does that. And yes, the sense as a sense of sight or the sense or hearing would come second. I would say music brings a lot of. I mean, it can bring back floods of memory, voices, and then it is sight, which just shows the memory for you, and then the rest is up to you.
Are there instances where the memory has been misinterpreted, as in like memory, no, but the situation in the photograph has been misinterpreted because of some context? And then-
It will always be misinterpreted, and it will always be appropriated to different people. It depends on, again, what you want out of it. What is your value system? What is your agenda? And so people will find what they want to find in it. So there is always, I mean, when something, because it's still abstract, right? It's not, and people, I mean, we are all in the design background. One of the first things we were taught was that nobody sees the same thing the same way, ever. If we're both given a tree to draw, I mean, 75 people will draw 75 trees.
Correct.
Of the same tree. And that is exactly how it works for even memory. And that people would remember it very differently. Between two people, the same incident will be remembered very differently.
Wow.
And so it's just contextualizing whatever we get, and so therefore the best response to a particular post or a story is another story of the same thing. That is the best response, not actually subjugating it to calling it a lie or fictional, because that is how people have seen it or have chosen to see it.
I think I'll be short of words, but yeah, right now it's fascinating. Just as the keyword. Anusha, just the given time we have, maybe like last two questions which I wanted to ask, because this subject is like endless. Yeah. So how has your photography or graphic design skills helped you to grow in this project?
Many things have happened. It all, I would say it all connects always something or the other. Is that even in my design, I research. Why am I doing a symbol logo design for somebody, or why a certain book is happening? It's also, then you get into the technical aspects, what people read, what colors, what choice of formats, will it be accessible, reading people's consumption behaviors. Then it comes to marketing. We were talking about marketing earlier, that it's all about how do you market it and what are people clicking on, why are they clicking on something. It's many of things. And photography, yes, because I'm fascinated by images. I mean, it's the story, there's so much to be read in pictures, and I like reading pictures, and then so much of it is outside the frame, because it's just, you can't capture the world in just four corners.
Correct.
Or circles or whatever shape you want to give it to, but geometry doesn't encapsulate memory, but it can bring you closest to it. And so it's all of it has helped. It helps me read my own work. It helps me interpret my own work. It helps me. All of these little things connect up, It's the voices. I mean, when I remember one of the first bosses I worked with said this to me, and it stayed in my mind because it was so helpful, was that which font do we choose for a particular subject? And he said the font is a voice. He said, is it a whisper? Is it female? Is it male? Is it scream? Is it, so decide what that voice is, and that's the font you will choose. And the penny just dropped, and since then the easiest thing for me is I just imagine the voice and the font is chosen. It's not, I'm not confused between a plethora of fonts, 55 million fonts, but it needs to be a voice. And what registers, what doesn't register. And in the technical, the rules are great. Also, the thing is, in design and photography, it's very helpful to know rules because then I know how to break them.
Correct.
One should never break rules if you don't know what the rules are because then you're just all over the place. You know how to negotiate that arena and then build new things with it.
Beautiful.
And it keeps it contemporary. The idea of design has always been that it must reflect
it connects with our audience.
At our times and how we think and how societies think and what is working and what is not. And especially in the Indian subcontinent. One of the things I remember when I was working in the UK, and I would tell them that if somebody has cracked advertising in India, you have cracked anywhere in the world. Because it is the hardest. Every 25 kilometers, the language changes, sensibility changes, colors, preference, food. How do you keep track of something like that? And if you can if you can create one idea for this entire country, you should be given the Nobel Prize for advertising.
That's why a lot of countries who come to India, like Uber and all, they really struggle. In fact, Amazon, if you see, every city has a different tone of voice.
Tone of voice, selection, taste. It's climate, all kinds of things will change.
Cool. Last question. What's the future with the Indian Memory Project? Where do you see it going? How do you see it evolving?
I would like it to have more content, number one. It's the mothership, and what it requires, its strength is its stories, and so therefore it must have more of it. It's like blood. If you need to have blood cells But there are plans of, I'm going to be redesigning the site. I'm going to be, creating more extensions with it. I'm working on a book on it right now. But and all of these are supporting ideas. They're not. They are not going to be the heroes. The hero will always be the mothership, the content and the archive itself. Because it must have a long-lasting... The idea, it was created so it becomes this great tool of reference. So it can't... so that will remain. That's the core of it. And all of these other interesting extensions will just help support it, will help build it, will create new avenues. And it helps me do interesting things like I can do exhibitions like the history of Indian crime, which was great to do that. It was the first one of its kind. It had never been done before, which was a history of Indian crime in India or the subcontinent through photographs, forensic photographs. And all these little 13 cases and how they came about, how pictures are appropriated, how they were used, misused, misinterpreted, using your word, or appropriated for different uses. It's fascinating that these kind of, to look at photography and what kind of other avenues it has, because it's not just to make people good. It was used for many, many purposes. And it's to also look at these ideas of culture and popular culture or past culture.
Correct. Beautiful. In fact, I would love to just, I don't know whether it's a suggestion or a tip, but like 1991 maybe can be further backdated, because the kind of amount of photographs and images which are generated with the Instagram age is just crazy. And
it's crazy.
It's
I'm not interested in it yet. Somebody will do it. It is a study of change again. And there will be studies. And there are already studies. People have started doing PhDs on selfies. So It's already beginning to happen, but it's not something I want to do because I think there's still. We've just tipped it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Correct,
I mean, there is.
In fact, this podcast, I feel, is just the tip of the iceberg because maybe like if you have time later, we can catch up again to discuss more. I would like to just talk more about one axis, which is time, and how has that progressed over time. Maybe so there are these things, right? Like what happened between 70 and 72. And just go deep
little
into it.
capsules of time. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Anusha, once
pleasure.
again for giving your time. And it was fun talking to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Same here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kedar.
Thank you.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.
At Speedway, we've always been here to get you what you need when you need it. We're committed to keeping our stores open, clean, and safe, so you can stay fueled and refreshed all summer long. We've got cold drinks for hot days and frozen drinks for even hotter ones, plus energy boosts, quick bites, and pick-me-ups. We're always on your way, and we're always here for you. So no matter what you need, when you stop by, we'll be ready. Now buy any 3 cooler beverages and get 500 bonus Speedy Rewards points.